I don't have any reference, by the way, for how other people feel about players other than Theo Greminger is he tells me when we're different on somebody, and he tells me I'm way high on him compared to the consensus. Don't care. He has every discernible trait you'd ever want in a wide receiver. From a route running standpoint, he's elite, probably best in class. From a run after catch standpoint, probably best in class. Downfield ball tracking stuff is excellent. Body control, excellent. The one knock or / concern is he's had some drops issues here and there. I don't care about drops. Like this past year, Amon-Ra St. Brown led the NFL in drops, and no one would say that guy has bad hands, right? So it's like I'm not knocking a guy for a few plays that went the wrong way. I'm all in on Casey Concepcion. I think he's awesome. I know analytically he's just going to be okay for you guys, Ryan and Jacob, but I'm willing to live with that.
Well, he's got the elite freshman production, so that's big.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. If you're making your way back to our small corner of the Dynasty Internet, if you're new here, well, welcome in, have a seat, and join us because we today have our own Big Zamboni, Brett Whitefield, draft guru, wide receiver extraordinaire, the only man that stood up for Michael Wilson before his breakout that I know of. He's once again here to share his very early Dynasty rookie tiers with us. Last year, this went bananas. Can only imagine what the comments and results are going to be today. Joining me, as always, Ryan Heath, Jakob Sanderson. I'm psyched. You're all psyched. Brett, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm just honored that I get to be called the Big Zamboni on the Canadian show on the network. That means a lot to me, especially growing up in Hockey Town. You know what I mean? That means a lot.
Yeah, we were joking that there's going to be like 9 people that probably know what a Zamboni is, but I mean, 3 of them are here, so let's go.
For the record, I do know what a Zamboni is.
Hey, look at that.
I feel like that's way more common knowledge than you guys give it credit for, but...
All right. Well,
it's when someone spills their drink and you have to just slurp it up off the table.
Yeah, that's right. That's also true. The way this is going to work today, because Brett is way more into the weeds in prospecting than any one of us are, we are going to let Brett go name by name and place each player in one of these tiers. We have future stars in and around 2 base first type players, yearly producers in and around 1 base first type players, potential producers in and around that late 1 type player. And I have this specifically as Brett likes this player more than most other people. We're going to call those base 2, just a fun little thing there. And then we're going to have our, the dart throws, the sleepers, the thing that everybody wants when they do a show like this. So Brett, the floor is yours. Let's start this off just with the 2026 class, for the most part, is being, let's just say, ridiculed. And at mass, there are very few spaces in the Dynasty world where this class is being, let's say, lifted. And usually when a consensus has one view of something, there's something being missed. So that's why I love this. We'll give you the floor. First player, where you have them, why, what do you like, all that. Let's go, player 1.
Before I hit player 1, let me just say, I think every year we like to do either the look forward routine or the revisionist history routine, where we make broad sweeping statements about an entire draft class. I don't think are always necessarily true. So for me, I really like this draft class. I think it's wide receiver heavy. Good luck finding good running backs here, and quarterback, obviously we already know about that. So just want to state, like, everyone's saying look to the future. I don't know that that's always the best strategy. I don't think that's always true. There's a lot of guys I really like in this class. So without further ado, Fernando Mendoza, future star here. I'm assuming we're talking, super flex tight end premium, right?
We're talking super flex tight end premium. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Fernando Mendoza, he's worthy of being the 101. He's not going to be because of Jeremiyah Love, obviously, but he is in the same bucket, same tier for me. I think he's my favorite quarterback I've evaluated since Joe Burrow. I think he's a better QB prospect than Trevor Lawrence. I'm huge on Fernando Mendoza. So that would be my 101 or 102. I didn't really organize this a certain type of way, but I love him in that top tier.
But I have one question for you that's not just about Mendoza, but generally. You already kind of alluded to the fact you're doing this obviously based on your own. You're not taking into account what you think is going to be the order by ADP. I am curious, do you take into account how you expect these guys to be drafted by the NFL, or is this just you purely on your ranks, and then you would adjust for dynasty purposes later for our listeners who are wondering how to contextualize this?
Yeah, I did add a little bit of like ADP ish in kind of the general construction of the list we're going to go through. Like I might have bumped a guy a few slots because I think he goes higher. Like a perfect example, we'll get to him with like a Makai Lemon. I think he might go higher than I like him, so I did kind of include him, a spot or two higher on my list than I probably normally would have.
My big question with Mendoza is obviously the one thing that we all want in a fantasy quarterback. You have him as a future star. I always knock these guys that are not prolific rushers. Do you think he can? You say you like him more than Lawrence. He's your favorite since Joe Burrow. Does he have that like 7%, 8% touchdown rate that these guys are generally going to need to hit that upper tier?
So much of that, lies in the situation. I will say, I mean, he does have 26 rushing touchdowns over his 3 years of starting at the Power 5 level of college football. So I think that's promising. I think actually, I had that number way off. Sorry, 11. He had 7 this past year. I did 7 times 3 apparently. I don't know what I was doing there. So he had 7 this past year. I think down the stretch in those big crucial games, when they were competing for national championship, you saw him way more willing to use his legs to move the chains and get the ball in the end zone. So I think he kind of proved that he's got that capability. It really will depend on the offensive coordinator he lands with, and we know it's going to be Clint Kubiak, right? So I think, I shouldn't say we know that. It seems like it's going to be Clint Kubiak as his play caller, but to me, it's just going to be how much are they willing to unleash that part of his game. I definitely see him more on that Joe Burrow spectrum, though, where, scrambles will come and go, the Baker Mayfield kind of type where he'll have games where he does it a lot, and then he'll go 4 or 5 games without it potentially. He's definitely of the pocket passer variety, so I understand you knocking him for that. I do think he's good enough to transcend that and still finish as a QB1 in fantasy, like Joe Burrow has routinely done, like a Jared Goff has done at times. So I think he's on that Joe Burrow spectrum there. He is mobile, but he's not a runner for sure.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by how much the film community seems to like this guy. That means a lot to me. Like his profile from a statistical lens until this year was frankly bad. This year was fantastic, of course. The history with guys who have this one big spike is mixed. You have some great examples like a Joe Burrow, some lesser examples for sure. Zach Wilson, Mitch Trubisky. My thing with Mendoza is just, I look at my rankings right now and I'm like, the amount of quarterbacks that run to the degree I project him to or less that are worth over a first in Dynasty is pretty small. It's like Joe Burrow. I don't know if I could think of anybody else. Maybe Brock Purdy, but he runs too a little bit. So it's tough for me to get there. But I love how much confidence you have in the eval. And my issue with Mendoza will probably less be about the eval of the player and more just you have to be so certain being right taking a quarterback that high, because if he's not Joe Burrow level and he's Jared Goff level, then to me it's a pretty big overspend with the 101 in Dynasty. Not that Jared Goff isn't valuable, but to me he's more of a guy I would want to spend a mid-first round rookie pick on than a 101.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to quickly kind of add on to that too, when it comes to just assuming that he lands in Vegas with Kubiak, that seems exciting, intriguing from a real life perspective in terms of just per play efficiency, but that's not necessarily like a high volume type of spot for fantasy. Like Burrow has gotten these amazing QB1 seasons on like these 500, 600 like drop back types of years. I don't know that that's in the cards with a Kubiak offense. Maybe it is, but yeah, that's another thing I'm gonna kind of have in the back of my mind when it comes to actually taking Mendoza in rookie drafts.
I think Burrow is so good that he would get that. I think he would get that number of dropbacks basically anywhere. I have no idea if Mendoza will be that good, but I think that Kubiak would be willing. I mean, we saw with Shanahan over time, and I don't think Brock Purdy's as good as Joe Burrow, but we've seen Shanahan over time as he's grown more and more comfortable with Purdy become more and more comfortable leaning on the pass, versus when he was in his Jimmy Garoppolo era and they were just racking up league low PROEs. I do think that the pass rate for me is always more of a quarterback stat than a coordinator stat. I think if Mendoza becomes super elite, we'll be okay on that front.
All right, that's Fernando Mendoza. Let's go to the second player on your list, Brett.
Yeah, it's Jeremiyah Love, the Notre Dame running back. And again, I'm not necessarily ranking him second. I just wanted to get to Fernando first. Jeremiyah Love is going to be the 101 and pretty much consensusly. If there's a league that he's not, somebody show me a screenshot, please, because I don't believe it. I'm kind of classifying Jeremiyah Love as thicker Jahmyr Gibbs. That's his play style. He is phenomenal in the pass game. He's excellent as an outside runner. He's excellent as an inside runner. There literally isn't anything he can't do. And as far as I always like to go back and look at my historical grades on classes I've been doing. This is my 12th draft class I've evaluated, right? And Jeremiyah Love scores as the third best running back I've ever evaluated, behind Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson. Better than guys like Ashton Genty, recently, or even the aforementioned Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'm really high on Jeremiyah Love. I think he's a dynasty-changing player. If you can get your hands on him, obviously that's going to be very good for your team. Landing spot for these guys, though, is so crucial. We saw with Genty last year, right? A bad landing spot can kind of sink you a little bit. So I kind of reserve a lot of judgment on the running backs until the draft actually happens, because it's just so landing spot dependent for those guys.
Yeah, I think Love will be a boring player to talk about, I think, in terms of where to rank him in rookie drafts. I think he's going to go at 1, like you said, in every single one, basically. But yeah, my only question was going to be the one you already answered, which was how does he line up next to some of these other mega elite early round 1 prospects? But yeah, for you, what is it about him specifically that separates him? Let's go versus a Genty that gives him that extra edge.
Yeah, so I think Love is a far more explosive back than Genty to start. I think he's got 3 career 90-plus yard runs, and all 3 of those runs are of the absolutely ridiculous variety. So he kind of checks the 3 major boxes. He scored as elite in all 3, which is vision, ability to create beyond your blockers, and burst/acceleration. And then the next 3 big buckets, his receiving ability, pass pro. I know the fantasy guys don't necessarily care about pass pro, but that's what gets you on the field on third down. That's how you get those third down targets, is by being on the field. So you got to be able to be trusted in pass pro.
Trevion fans are all wishing that
I think we all care about
make
pass
them care.
pro. Yeah,
okay, good.
They have to.
I think people care. Anyone who's reasonable is caring about pass pro.
I get eye rolls when I talk about running back pass pro and tight end run blocking. I get eye rolls on most podcasts I do, so I'm glad you guys aren't giving me those. But it's definitely important. He's awesome at it. So
great.
I'm pretty sure pass pro is going to be in my model based on some of the early numbers I'm looking at. I think it can actually add a lot to a statistical approach too when you have grades to use. So
my only issue with that is, what do you use for pass pro grades? Because I care a lot about pass pro, but I find that PFF's pass pro grades are horrible. Unusably bad. In fact, I would say not only do I think that they're bad, I think that they actually have negative signal. It's just based on years of observing the PFF pass pro grades, because I do care a lot about it, but I've always wanted to find a way to incorporate it. But every time I look, now this is more NFL than college, but every time I look at their pass pro grades, consistently the running backs who get used most frequently in third and long situations are lining the bottom of their pass pro grade. So it's either every single NFL coach is a complete moron, which I'm pretty willing to criticize NFL coaches, but I wouldn't go that far. Or something is wrong with just grading the degree of difficulty in assignments to the point where it's clearly the running backs that I think are just getting the most difficult assignments are losing at the highest rate, and then they're getting really, really dinged for it. So I think it's hard, which it's tough. Usually the way I try to build it in is I just rely on people that are smarter at grading it. And then, sometimes we're right and sometimes we get this whole community last year, including Chris Ballard standing at a podium talking about Trevion Henderson's pass pro after not even drafting him, and then he can't make a pass block in the NFL.
Yeah. No, we can, if you want, after the show, I can screen share the spreadsheet, show you what I'm looking at.
Okay.
But I hear your concerns, obviously.
He was #prepared. Let's move on to, we got 3 straight players from a position group that everybody always loves in the Dynasty fantasy landscape, but a position that we desperately need the next guys. When you're looking at guys like CeeDee Lamb, going to be 28 around this time next year. These elite guys that we have to be clicking early in the second round at wide receiver that we may not feel as confident about next year. We really need that next group of guys because Marv, Ladd, BTJ, Rome, certainly so far not that. Brett, what do you like about first player you have here in Carnell Tate?
Carnell Tate is awesome. Historically, another historical reference. He lines up. He fits right between AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb for me for historical grades. He's coming off one of the most efficient seasons in college football history. He had over an 80% catch rate despite an ADOT of almost 20 yards downfield. It's like legitimately unheard of. His contested, catch rate is great, even though I don't know that we can trust the source on that, but I've evaluated it myself. He doesn't have a single thing he does poorly. If you're going to criticize him at all, it'd be his run after catch is a little bit underwhelming, but when he's kind of pinned to the boundary, we see this with Ohio State guys. Those boundary receivers typically don't, have a lot of yak opportunities, whether it goes back to Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then the guys in the slot, Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith and Jigba, they do get the yak opportunities. So I wouldn't knock him too much for that, but he is phenomenal. He's smooth as butter as a route runner. The separation he can create in the short part of the field, intermediate, downfield is incredible. The stem, the release package is incredible. The body control, which is my number one trait for wide receivers, he scores like a 99 out of 100. It's pretty fantastic. I've comped him to AJ Green, to be quite honest with you guys. Like, I think he's that good.
Damn, anyone thinks AJ Green's not that good is insane. That guy was unreal.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, he hits every meaningful threshold in terms of yards per team pass attempt, yards per route run in year 2 and year 3, and early declared he did that all next to the best player in college football. So pretty hard to argue with anything on the statistical side, and seems very likely to be the first, maybe not very likely, but better than a coin flip for sure, to be the first wide receiver selected.
Yep, age adjusted, schedule adjusted, all the efficiency is really strong when you put it all into context for Tate. So yeah, zero concerns there.
Okay, so we've got a future stars here for Carnell Tate. What do we got next up on the list here, Britt?
My next wide receiver, and I'm tempted to just go call this guy future star and then call that a tier break, but I guess for now, let's just, because I don't like considering it like at 4. I don't think he's typically a pick 4 in a draft. I think he's a guy like higher than that normally. So, but whatever. Between a future star and a yearly producer, I'm going to go Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. I absolutely love this guy. I don't have any reference, by the way, for how other people feel about players other than Theo Greminger is he tells me when we're different on somebody, and he tells me I'm way high on him compared to the consensus. Don't care. He has every discernible trait you'd ever want in a wide receiver, except that he's 5'11". He's not 6'2", which I don't really care. I think the new wave wide receiver of late is in that 5'11" to 6'1" range, and so as long as he maintains that 5'11" status, I think we're good there. But from a route running standpoint, he's elite, probably best in class. From a run after catch standpoint, probably best in class. Downfield ball tracking stuff is excellent. Body control, excellent. The one knock or / concern is he's had some drops issues here and there. I don't care about drops. As long as we're within reason, I don't really factor into my score at all. I view it similarly to the sack versus pressures debate with edge rushers, where it's like the drops are so what's the word I'm looking for? They vary so much. There's a lot of variable with drops season over season. Like this past year, Amon-Ra St. Brown led the NFL in drops, and no one would say that guy has bad hands, right? So it's like I'm not knocking a guy for a few plays that went the wrong way, because we're talking a difference of like 3 to 5 plays a year, what separates, having good hands and bad hands. So I'm all in on Casey Concepcion. I think he's awesome. I know analytically he's just going to be okay for you guys, Ryan and Jacob, but I'm willing to live with that.
Well, he's got the elite freshman production, so that's big and nice to see. It's been more muted since then. The most important question on my spreadsheet is: am I calling this guy Kevin or Casey? Because this has spreadsheet disaster potential written all over it.
It does.
Depending on where you look, he has a different name.
His combine invite, I'm pretty sure, was under KC Concepcion, which means that's
my main concern alleviated. Yeah. As long as every data source out there can agree, we need to have a meeting, and I'll agree what his name is, and then I'm happy with him.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, he definitely feels like somebody that's going to go ahead of Mendoza when it's actually time for super flex rookie draft.
Depends if he gets round 1. I think if he gets round 1, it's possible, especially because he's probably going to go in the late first if he goes in the first, and that's where some of the sexiest landing spots are, right? So if you get, is this the year the Bills finally take a wide receiver in round 1, like whoever ends up going somewhere like that. If the Patriots take a wide receiver, that would be very exciting. So I think we are going to see whoever it is among that second tier from the NFL draft perspective, obviously not from Brett's perspective, he's not in the second tier, come in and get that landing spot boost.
I'm still just going to be the guy that doesn't want to run one wide receiver to Buffalo. Like, I'm still going to be that guy. The spread it out, throw it to everyone type stuff is just infuriating. So unless we're like,
who would you have liked them to throw it to the last couple of years, like for 140 targets? Like, who would you have liked them to design their offense around?
I wish they had that. Like, we need that Stephon Diggs guy back again. I don't know when we're ever going to get there.
Don't you think it would be a signal that they feel that way if they take someone round 1?
I don't know. Maybe Kenyon Coleman was so bad they physically realized they couldn't do it. But
correct.
I don't know.
Yeah, correct.
We'll see. It's the same head coach, or it's the same guy calling the offense. So I want to see it, but for the most part, I feel like that's just like a fantasy community only thing. And the hashtag real football will forever get in the way of that Stephon Diggs level season from Buffalo again. But I agree. I want it. Trust me. All right. Next up, another wide receiver. Brett, what do you like about this guy from Arizona State?
Jordyn Tyson. He's a really good prospect. I think the community in general is higher on him than I am even. He's a real toolsy guy. Like, he has all this raw physical ability, but the detail and the finer skills you need to develop to be an excellent NFL wide receiver just kind of are lagging behind currently. He's on and this is going to scare the crap out of people, and I've said it a couple times, and the reception has not been great. I'm going to keep saying it. He's on the Quentin Johnston to Xavier Legette spectrum, where he's just an athlete playing football right now, and he needs to land in a good spot to develop him. I think we've seen Quentin Johnston develop not the way we wanted, but decently, and then we've seen Xavier Legette not develop at all. So we're hopeful he turns out better than both, obviously, but he really is just a freak athlete playing the wide receiver position. And when I say freak athlete, I mean like functional athlete. I don't know how he'll test. I don't know any of that at the combine. I think some GPS numbers on him are pretty good, but you see the functional body control, the make you miss potential, but everything he does in the Arizona State offense is just playing to space. They scheme him open, they scheme him into space. He catches the ball with literally no one around him, and then he goes and runs for 20 yards, and it's a day. So I do like him, though. The physical traits are very enticing. He just doesn't have the detail-oriented football in his DNA yet that we're going to have to see him develop. He might be a slow starter. So if you're playing strategically, maybe you pass on him this year and then trade for him on the cheap after a lackluster rookie year, Yeah.
Statistically, he's going to be a fascinating player to dive into, and I expect him to be the player that probably has the widest range of opinions. And that's just because his profile is really interesting. So he comes in year 1, gets a little bit of run, actually pretty promising freshman year. Doesn't play, I think, at all in year 2, or almost all due to injury. Has this awesome year 3. Statistically, really, of all of the guys we're talking about in round 1 consideration, it's the best peak season of any of these dudes in his year 3 season. But then comes back last year, misses a little bit more time due to injury, statistically down. And so how you kind of calibrate this all together is going to be very interesting. And I think different people, depending on what goes into their models versus just how they sort of weight everything is going to be fascinating. He's a guy I'm excited to spend more time watching across February and March, and let that kind of inform my process on it too. So he'll be, I think, probably of the top 3. Now, Concepcion, this guy is probably going to be a little bit later in the draft. Of the guys who will probably see their name called first 3 off the draft, I expect him to have the most wide variance of opinions especially from the data community.
Just to like quickly kind of add on to what Jacob is saying, Tyson is a guy where when I'm just like looking at my spreadsheet, and he's a guy where I'm like, if this 2025 season wasn't there, I feel like my overall like vibe perception of what the numbers in front of me are would be like much better. So I don't know. Is there like additional context that Brett or anybody can give kind of on the senior season? Was something like happening with the team, the quarterback play? Like, are there like excuses? What's like kind of the deal here?
He battled injuries the entire season. Yeah, that it's really just injuries for him. Just all year long was banged up. I think it was a knee, a foot, maybe even a shoulder in there. Like it was rough season for him. He had a really good quarterback too, the number one transfer portal quarterback in the country, who's now I believe at LSU, Sam Leavitt. So
Yeah, it's not that much different than when you looked at like Burden. It was like, well, he was still really good. You just look at the quarterback play. There was, like Ryan said, there's like you could kind of excuse away that last season in college for him. So I like that. I love it. And it's funny you mentioned like people roll their eyes at like
he didn't have Levitt much for his last year, right? Didn't Levitt only play in a few games, then he got hurt?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Levitt was hurt a little bit. He played a little. Hold on, I'm looking up Levitt stats.
I think I have him playing in 7 games, and I don't know how many of those were overlap with the games Tyson missed, or if any, but he missed about half the year.
It looks like he shut it down after Tyson got hurt.
I was just going to say that it's amazing you say people roll their eyes at someone like Quentin Johnston, but he was more valuable to you than his teammate was this year, especially when you include where you draft him. So to have him in a tier of a yearly producer, that's still a valuable player. You can want the Jamar Chase all you want, but QJ was pretty damn good in your flex spots quite a bit this year. So do not discount that player out when you hear names like QJ and some others, like you will during the draft cycle. That's important to remember when we're discussing prospects. Anything's realistically possible. All right, we've got a position shakeup here at tight end. We have been spoiled with guys like Loveland, Warren, Bowers, McBride, Laporta. Where does this guy fit to you in that range, and where do you have him in terms of these tier positions?
Yeah, I went yearly producer for the tier here for Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. I think he's got a chance to be better than that even. I just think we've seen a huge rush of young tight ends into the league, and so they're not all going to be awesome, right? It's just not possible. So, but I do think he's got a chance to be a really, really awesome player in the NFL. My favorite thing about him, to nerd out, is the run blocking, because at 6'3", 245 pounds, it's easy to look at the physical attributes and say, oh, that's like a pass down only. But that's a Dalton Kincaid or a Will Mallory even, or a Jaheim Bell type guy. But he is an awesome player in the run game. I think he profiles as a guy who's an every down player from day one in the NFL. That's a huge advantage when you're talking about dynasty tight ends, because he will get all of those opportunities early on. Obviously, landing spot is important. If he lands in Colson Loveland to deal with Cole Kmet for the first 10 games, which is stupid, right? But Kenyon Sadiq, landing in the right spot, being an every down player right away, I think is huge for his potential. And then on top of that, he's a great athlete. He's a good route runner. I think his talent is a little bit unrealized, where you didn't see it manifest a ton. The Oregon offense just didn't use him the way they probably should have. It probably pans out in his analytics too, I'm guessing, guys, right? Where it's like he just is a little bit left to be desired. He's not at that Ty Warren, Colson Loveland level or obviously not Brock Bowers either as far as analytical profile, but I think he's close to those guys in terms of talent.
Yeah, he's a bit of a projection. The production is not really there, but I understand tight end is a weird position. We have more of a history of like unproductive players hitting in a big way at tight end than we do at running back and at wide receiver. I think he also has reasonable context. They have another really good tight end there who also had, frankly, similar production in Jamari Johnson this season. And so it's going to be interesting. I mean, I expect him to test quite well, right, Brett? I mean, that's from what people seem to think. And so if you mix high-end athleticism with the ability to play on all 3 downs and get snaps, I'm pretty interested. I think there's probably at least one more wide receiver I'll have ranked above him going into rookie drafts, but I do think he's probably in play as a first-round option, assuming he gets first-round draft capital, which seems to be extremely likely.
Yeah, and I think even something to note kind of with guys like this that are going to project as like every down tight ends is, yes, landing spot matters for every player, obviously, but for these types specifically, it is kind of nice that it matters a little bit less. Like we have had this discussion so much on the show where it's like, is Harold Fannin and Aronde Gadsden and Dalton Kincaid and all these guys, are they going to work for fantasy? Well, depends on their offensive coordinator. Depends what they want to actually do. But yeah, if Sadiq is going to actually fit into on every single down, then that like removes that concern as well from like a longer term perspective in Dynasty too.
Perfect. Let's keep it moving, diving back into the wide receiver. You notice we're not going to see a quarterback here for a while, if at all, but we got another wide receiver here. Brett, who's next for you?
Yeah, USC Makai Lemon, still in this yearly producer bucket, even though I'm probably lower on Makai than consensus. I still really like Makai Lemon, guys. I just think a lot of what he brings to the table is more attitude and willpower. So it's kind of sounds tacky, but like he plays the game like Puka Nacua, where it's a lot of it is effort. It's just, I'm going to go be a dog in the run game. I'm going to catch a slant and take it 25 yards and break 3 tackles. But when you look at like the skill component, and I think this really matters, the skill component just is lagging. And I actually believe he's got some anatomical detractions there where it's like, I don't see really loose hips where he can sink and explode out of breaks. You don't see a real twitchy route runner at all. In fact, you see a lot of missteps and false steps in his route running. You see him running into coverage often against zone. So there's some really interesting things to his game where I think he needs a little bit of a developmental runway to perfect the position. And then I also think he might have some limitations that stop him from reaching an Amon-Ra St. Brown / Puka Nacua level from a technique standpoint. So you're really just working with this super try hard guy who might be a slightly above average athlete who's undersized. So it's like, there's a lot of red flags for me in the profile. Again, I do really like him as a football guy. I love watching Makai Lemon play the game. Clearly is a dude who just loves to go out there and lay it all on the line every snap. I think the NFL will be endeared to him for that reason as well. However, it is worth noting they pass on these guys all the time. Puka Nacua, 5th round pick, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th round pick, Jalen Noel, 4th round pick. Like, these are the types of guys he reminds me of. And the NFL has been perfectly fine passing on. I think Luther Burden, similar as well, and kind of the way they move and some of the anatomical deficiencies I saw. And, early in the process, everyone thought he was a top 20 pick. I had said the entire draft process he was a 2nd round pick. He goes in the 2nd round. So I feel like I have a pretty good feel on how the NFL views these guys. Just like everybody, landing spot matters a ton. If he lands with Sean McVay in LA, well, then just forget everything I just said. He's going to be a superstar, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, statistically strong. I'm interested to hear Brett's take. I think, as we get into this, I'm trying to hear more perspectives from more people in the film community, especially. This is probably the first conversation I've had that's been a bit more sour on him. So I was excited to hear that when I saw him ranked a little lower down his list. Yeah, I mean, my initial impression is strong profile. His dots, if you plot out the dots, they're basically overlapping with Carnell Tate's, although obviously he doesn't have the context of competing next to Jeremiah Smith, so you'd probably rather take that on a tie break. The thing that I like is just where his production comes from. Pretty good fit to me with most of the modern offenses in the NFL. Sure. In terms of where he's winning in the field. So that makes me usually tend to really like this archetype of player, but excited to watch more and talk to more people and certainly take note of those. I'll note on the draft capital side, I think outside chance to be the 1st overall taken, probably more likely the 2nd or 3rd wide receiver taken right now in most mock drafts. But, if some of those athleticism concerns were to show up at the combine or pro day, for instance, maybe slides down and becomes 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, as Jacob said, statistical perspective, really great. 2 years above 3 yards per hour run at young ages. Like, all of that seems good. I was kind of taking it for granted that he was just going to go like top 12 to top 15 in the NFL draft. If he doesn't, as Brett is suggesting, then I would say, yeah, that there's clearly like a concern here. Need to look a bit further past just the dots, as Jacob says. But yeah, for now, I mean, on paper, I really like him from the numbers perspective. But yeah, interested to see how that plays out.
I love it. Let's move to another wide receiver here. for you, Brett. I'm getting a theme.
Yeah, well, as I started at the top of the show with strong draft for wide receivers. Denzel Boston, Washington, another guy I kind of have as this yearly producer. He similar to Lemon, he kind of embodies competitive toughness and physicality. It's kind of what he does. It's just different because he's 6'4", 215, and can kind of handle that a little bit better. I think, long term. He has some really good body control, though. You see some competitive toughness at the catch point where it's like he is not moved off of his spot at all. His route stem, he's not really pushed out of his track either. Overall a physically gifted player. I don't think he's like an elite athlete, but I think he's a really strong player. I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of him making him a power slot. I think Washington flirted with it for like a two routes a game, and he'd get a target and it'd look really pretty. And it's like, man, can we just do this more? But I really like Denzel Boston. Totally different than really any of the guys we've talked about so far, where I think he's more of a he's kind of played like hair on fire, big slot type guy, but he's got some vertical speed as well, but he doesn't have that one thing he does awesome. And that kind of gives me a little bit of pause, because I think in the NFL, the NFL is leaning towards expertise in certain areas, right? Either you're a run after catch demon, or you're a downfield guy, or you're route runner. Boston's just kind of good at a lot of things. He checks a lot of boxes, but he's not like elite in one thing. So it gives me a little bit of concern there.
I love it. Lots more we can add with him, obviously, as we get further and further in the process. Maybe we'll have a few more questions answered with him. We have back-to-back wide receivers from the same school. We saw this last year and how that wound up. They ended up going to the same team. So let's see what happens this year. Obviously, with Mendoza having the run that Indiana had, it's going to change some perspectives. But let's talk about these two guys here, Sarratt and Cooper Jr.
Yeah, really like both. They are very different players. Sarratt, similar to how I just described Boston, he's kind of like really good at everything, but he's not elite at anything except for, I would say, his ability at the catch point is ridiculous. Ball tracking, ball skills, physicality at the catch point is awesome. The touchdowns speak for themselves. I think he's got 45 career touchdowns in 4 seasons of college football. That's obviously excellent. And he has a legit skill to get in the end zone. He's also really good after the catch. He's a very good route runner. Elite separator, despite, I would say, average athleticism. He's not going to go to the combine and tear it up. Was really disappointed I didn't get to look at him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. He would have been a great addition, because I think the combine will be used against him. I thought the Senior Bowl would be a good offset for that, where he can go show his route running and separation skills. He's probably going to run a 4.55, 4.6 though at the combine, and that's going to scare everyone off him. I don't care. I think the dude's a hell of a football player. His teammate Omar Cooper Jr. is opposite, very twitchy, very explosive. Other than Casey Concepcion, for my money, best run after catch player in the draft. Kind of has a running back build below the waist, like huge thighs, big bubble ass, things you love in a run after catch type player. He's going to break a ton of tackles. And then he also has, 3 or 4 just absolutely alien catches on tape this past season, where the one famous one from what was it, week 12, I think.
The one against Penn State.
Yes,
when Gus Johnson lost his voice. Oh my Cooper!
Dude, it was disgusting. He's got 3 or 4 of those on tape this year, so he's got the body control, ball tracking, run after catch. A little bit to work on as a route runner, but he has that twitchy explosiveness. He's very loose athlete, very flexible. I think he can kind of develop into a really good do-it-all receiver. Reminds me a little bit of like a young Steph Diggs.
Cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into the Indiana guys. I know Ryan had some takes on them pre-show.
Yeah, these are just, and of course, as we've said, I'm not that far into my process, but the Indiana guys both kind of immediately jumped out to me just as I'm looking through some of the metrics I care about. And I'm just like addicted to these situations, I feel like, where there are multiple like NFL prospects in one place that can all be affecting each other statistically, right? Like you can get these like really kind of high upside situations where it maybe like one of the prospects sucks. Maybe it's like the Johnny Manziel corollary, but the receivers are amazing, or vice versa. Sarratt especially, I thought it was interesting that he was quite productive even before Mendoza got there. So yeah, I haven't dug that deeply into these guys, but these were two of the first guys that I DM'd Brett to ask about a few days ago, and I was very excited that it sounded like Brett is quite into them as well, compared to some of the consensus stuff that I've seen around.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited for them. These are two players I'm watching closely. I will say next guy up is going to be my favorite of this draft class. I think he's fun. I think he's got one of the best nicknames in the game. That matters. Hashtag drip matters. Just get the jersey number right. But I love Chris Brazzell. I love everything I see from him. He flashes all the time. Brett, I cannot wait for this.
I'll note too, like, regardless, this is completely irrespective of my take someone's a football player, but like, can't be rooting for anyone harder because one, he played at Tennessee, which I adopted based on Peyton Manning going to school there as my team. But not only that, but his dad played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so I love this dude.
That's a great lead in. So Chris Brazzell, I got to admit, I was guilty of helmet scouting him first. I saw when I was like putting together my summer scouting list, I saw Tennessee and I was like, no, not again. I don't want to do another Tennessee wide receiver. Are you kidding me? And then I saw his measurables. I'm like, it's just Dante. He's just going to do Dante Thornton stuff. That's all. Like, he's just replacing Dante Thornton, whatever. Then I actually watched the tape at Tennessee and was like, okay, there's something there. 6'5", like exceptionally fluid route runner for a Tennessee wide receiver. Like, they don't teach route running in Tennessee, so that's really strange. Then I realized he came from Tulane, put on the Tulane tape, and that's what sold me on Chris Brazzell. The route running at 6'5", 210 is unbelievable. It's super fluid. He's not an overly explosive guy, actually, but his ability to sink and explode, get in and out of breaks, he can win with speed rolls. He can win with harsh breaks at a negative angle. Like, he is fantastic as a route runner for his size. It's I hate to invoke Drake London because he was a top 10 pick. Sorry, but that's what it kind of reminds me of. Like, guys that tall usually aren't good route runners. Well, he is a really good route runner. He's not just a typical Tennessee vert ball kind of guy. So I kind of fell in love with him from the Tulane tape, and the rest is history as far as my score goes. So he needs to put on some weight. I think he lacks the physical component you want out of a guy that big. So if he can develop a little bit of strength and play strength, and that will help him with his body control and contested catch stuff. But as of right now, like, he should be a red zone weapon. Guys that move like that in the short part of the field are really hard to guard because he can cover so much ground and get open. And once he gets separation on you, it's pretty much over with his catch radius.
I like it. I love it. He is just phenomenal to watch. He's so much fun. One of my favorite. I don't have like really strong player takes or any. I love him. I really do.
I'll say this to the guy who watches a lot of Tennessee. Like, if I was ranking them, like, not through my prospecting lens, but just who do I trust to make a play basis over the last few years of this Heupel era, him and Tillman would be the top of the chart for me, above Hyatt, and well above Dante Thornton, which I thought was like the weirdest hype machine ever. He ran like 100 routes last year.
Brazzell, his game reminds me of Tillman a little bit, for what it's worth. I think he's a little bit more polished than Tillman even was, and it doesn't have the injury history, so that's nice. But that's a good comp.
I love it. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch him going forward. He'll be 80% rostered on my teams for better or worse. So I'm prepared. Let's round out this top 12. We have another tight end cracking the list before another quarterback. So I love that. Let's talk about Mr. Stowers here from Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Eli Stowers, Vanderbilt tight end. He'd be higher on my list if this was purely just guys that I think can play football. He's an awesome football player, awesome receiver. He's a move tight end, slot, put him out wide, put him in the backfield, put him, in the wing, or he can play inline. He is 230, 235 pounds, though, and so he doesn't project necessarily as an every down player right away, and this is why he's a little bit lower on the list, because I think he's a more dynamic pass catcher than Kenyon Sadiq by a lot. But there's a chance you have to be really patient with him in dynasty formats. That said, the caveat there is there's never been a better time in the NFL to invest significant draft capital into a move tight end because of 12 and 13 personnel taking the league by storm. That's a trend that's going to last 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. And getting him in right now, he might have enough developmental runway early on to warrant a high dynasty pick because he will be on the field for more, first and second downs than he would have in years past. So I'm big on Eli Stowers. If he can add a little bit to his frame and develop as a run blocker, I think he has legit staying power in the NFL. Uber dynamic pass game weapon. Like he's just him and Diego Pavia. Say what you will about him. They literally carried Vanderbilt to almost the CFB playoff. That team is complete garbage, and just those two guys alone almost did it. So I'm all in on him. Route running, ball control, body control, ball skills, ball tracking, you name it. He has all of the skills. He's basically a big wide receiver.
Yeah, he sounds like a Baltimore Raven to me.
He's a fascinating backstory. So this guy came out of high school at 6'4", 204, was recruited as a quarterback to Texas A&M. He played quarterback for them. I mean, he didn't really play, but he was on the roster as a quarterback for them for 2 seasons. After that, he transfers to New Mexico State, also named the Aggies, by the way. So he played for both Aggie schools in college football. And he was like a Taysom Hill type. He recorded passing stats, he recorded rushing stats, and he recorded receiving stats. He was partially quarterback, partially tight end. He then gets transferred to Vanderbilt, where he becomes a full-time tight end for the first time in year 4. So statistically, it's going to be a little weird. He doesn't really have any receiving profile until year 4. He didn't really play tight end until year 4. Wins the Mackey Award last year in his final season, puts on some bulk. I mean, he's still light for sure, but he's put on about 30 pounds over the course of his college career. I love this guy. He's going to be very coach and scheme dependent in terms of just, like Brett said, there's a wide variation in terms of what offensive coordinators will do with players like this. There are some, like we saw with Harold Fannin last year, that will happily play a player like this for 80% of the routes. There are others where you won't. The best example to me of this is just Juwan Johnson the last 2 seasons. He's the same player, also a wide receiver convert. Playing under Kubiak, he was like stuck in a platoon with Foster Moreau. Kellen Moore comes in, has different ideas about the tight end position. He becomes an every route player. He was a fantasy tight end 1 last year. So you are, I think, at the mercy of landing spot with a guy like Stowers. But I really love him, and he's a fun background player.
Getting through the top 12, we have Brett here for almost an hour, but I wanted to make sure we got some of Brett's guys and some sleepers. So towards this tail end here, we're just going to let Brett do his thing. Let us know what players he has where, because if they're one of Brett's guys, they're going to very quickly become one of my guys.
All right, I'm going to go Ty Simpson, quarterback, Alabama. He's next player on the list, actually. My QB2. And in fact, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I started diving in really heavy to the quarterback class in mid-October. And at that point in time, I did not see a huge gap between him and Mendoza. Mendoza promptly turned it on and played the next 7 games better than I've seen most quarterbacks play in their entire life, while Ty Simpson absolutely wet the bed. So there's a massive gap between the two now. And you hate to say it's a 7-game sample, but I really don't like quarterbacks that wet the bed. And Simpson, in the biggest moments of the season, absolutely came unhinged. And so that said, he's an interesting case study. He's a 4-year player at Alabama, didn't get to start until his 4th year, and then declared for the NFL. Probably could have came back for some eligibility, but with the weak quarterback class, why not gamble on a high draft slot? He has arm talent. He's got a bazooka for an arm. And in fact, for my money, like the throws I value on tape, attacking the middle of the field in tight windows, having to read out coverages, he probably has more of those throws than Mendoza on tape, to be quite honest with you. It's just all the other things that Mendoza does at a high level that I like him so much more. Simpson's just a bit of a statue. I think the dynasty community, fantasy community, is not really going to like him for that reason. Not really a running threat at all. And so you're really hamstrung to him being a productive QB2 as a dynasty player for him to have any value to you. And that's still a big if, because we don't know where he's going to get drafted. And he might not get to start for several seasons, right? Like say he ends up in LA. That's the most frequent landing spot I see in the draft community. Say he lands in LA. Well, Stafford's still there. Stafford might play a year, might play 2, might play 3. We don't know. So Simpson might not get a chance to start there for a long time. And that could be ugly. So, but he's got NFL stuff for sure. He's got to work on what's going on between the years, but I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah, he feels like a jet to me.
Sure.
It just feels like some stuff missing between the ears. He feels like a jet.
Can we not put a 1-year starter on the New York Jets? Can we not?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. So that's the rub with Ty Simpson. 1-year starter. The one thing he needs is experience. but I don't know if he needs that kind of experience. Like you'd much rather. I think the LA situation is a great middle ground because it's like Stafford's not going to participate in training camp, so you get to go into LA, and then you get all summer to be QB1 in camp, be QB1 in all the preseason games. So you get that preparation, those reps, the install, and then when the season starts, you go back to being the backup, and it's kind of a perfect medium. Him just getting thrown to the wolves in New York is probably not going to be good for his development.
Yeah, I can see them doing it. I can see him doing it.
They have 2 picks, 16 overall.
Exactly. All right, Brett. What do we got coming up next?
Yeah, let's go right down the list. Malachi Fields, Notre Dame, wide receiver, 6'4", 225, 230, and he's strong. He's man strong.
Zamboni strong even.
Zamboni strong. He was the best player at the Senior Bowl. He was fantastic. Best skill player at the Senior Bowl. Probably the best ball tracking in the class. He's a throwback X wide receiver. We haven't had a lot of these guys in one draft class in several years, but there's like 5 or 6 of them in this class where true X receiver, line up, win with physicality, strength, body control. It's a little bit different than what the NFL is doing right now, so he's not higher on my list, but I kind of adjusted for you guys. But he's a really good player, and I think he could be a strong wide receiver too in a good offense, like a T. Higgins type.
I love it. What do we got next?
Yeah, let's hit a cluster of running backs. If you look at
finally get to the RV2.
Yeah. I got 4 of them clumped for you guys on purpose.
Yeah.
Jonah Coleman of Washington, Jadarian Price of Notre Dame, that's Jeremiyah Love's backup, Mike Washington Jr. of Arkansas, and Emmett Johnson of Nebraska, all very different flavors. Jonah Coleman is a bowling ball, like 5'9", 230 out of Washington, but he doesn't play to that size and girth. And in fact, you watch his tape and you're like, this guy's way more comfortable in space, which doesn't make any sense. Really good receiver for 5'9", 230. It's just kind of mind-blowing. So he's a very weird prospect to evaluate because it's just what you expect him to be good at and what he is good at are 2 different things. And then Jadarian Price, Jeremiyah, I'm so skeptical of him. A lot of he's got these crazy bloated efficiency numbers, yards per carry, I think over 7 on his career, something ridiculous like that. I think he caught like 15 balls in his entire career in college. And when you really break down some of these runs, it's like he comes in for 3rd and 20 and rips off an 18-yard draw, and then they punt. It's like, okay. I mean, what? I don't know what to do with that. So I do think he's got a ton of gas, though. Very explosive player. He's got some good making moves, make you miss stuff. But I think he might be an early down only kind of player. I don't see a lot of natural receiving ability. I don't see any pass protection chops. So that's concerning. Mike Washington Jr., the Arkansas back, he's David Montgomery reincarnate. If you like a guy who's going to play with his hair on fire, stick his face in a fan, physical runner, punishing runner with limited explosiveness, but all really good in the pass game despite his size. Like Washington's hands, his route running, pass protection, it's all really good. He kind of profiles as an every down player in the right offense or as a David Montgomery type in a share with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. And then Emmett Johnson of Nebraska is the smaller, explosive back of the class. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, but he can fly. I think he'll run, a 4.35, 4.4 at the combine. He's got a little Brazzell II to his game, just pure burner. Maybe a little bit more make you miss potential than a Brazzell II from last year. But ultimately, for me, all these guys should be 3rd-round picks in the NFL. And so it really will come down to who gets the best opportunity from day one for me to actually rank them in Dynasty. But I kind of laid them out how I see them.
Yeah, and you think 3rd-round picks, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, well, who's to think that they're not valuable? Look at how high a guy like Caleb Johnson went last year in rookie drafts, and that's the type of player. Do you have a sleeper or 2 to end off on?
Yeah, I'll throw a sleeper out there. UConn wide receiver Skylar Bell. He's a 5'11", 6 foot, 205 pound, really good build. Inside out type receiver, played a lot in the slot at UConn, also played out wide. Just the attention to detail as a route runner is something you don't see at a school like UConn very often. Just a really good player. He was their whole offense. So I'm a big fan of Skylar Bell. He kind of checks most boxes for me. He's got body control. He's good after the catch, really good after the catch actually. But the versatility for him to play X, play in the slot, or be the flanker, I think we'll get a lot of teams on board where it's like we can draft this guy see what we got in camp, and just make sure he gets on the field. Just get our best 3 out there. And I think he elevates an offense from that standpoint. Really good kick returner as well. So I think he's going to have some added value there. But he's a really good player.
Before we get out of here, Brett, one last sleeper for the people.
Chris Bell, wide receiver, Louisville. This guy had a late ACL tear, or otherwise he probably was on track to be a first-round pick. He's kind of A.J. Brownish, maybe not as explosive as A.J. Brown, but as far as like the way he plays, slants, back shoulders, go balls, like he lives in that range. Physically imposing though, guys like DBs could not handle his size and strength. Just an absolute man amongst boys. And my favorite thing about Chris is he had a stretch in the season where he played 4 ranked opponents in a row at Louisville. And I think in that 4-game stretch, he averaged over 150 yards per game. So against the best level of comp, he had his best 4 games of the season. Really impressive from that standpoint. I don't know that he would tear up the combine if he was healthy, but I think he's a good athlete, not great athlete, but the skills and what he brings as a big slot or outside X receiver is just fantastic. So I do think he would have been a first-round pick. It's possible it still happens, right? We saw Jameson Williams was my number 1 receiver his draft class. Well, he didn't, after that ACL tear, I think people were soured on him, and he still went 12th overall on a trade-up too. So the Lions gave up a bunch of capital to go get him at 12 overall. So maybe it still does happen for a team at the end of the first who doesn't necessarily need a guy right away and is willing to wait on him a little bit. But otherwise, he should be an early second-round pick.
I love it. Brett, every time you come in here to chop up prospects, everyone benefits. So we're definitely going to drag you back here to do this again. If you want Brett's content, you can find it over at fantasypoints.com. You can use promo code DPP26 to get 10% off of your subscriptions right now. You can also catch him on the Draft podcast with Theo Greminger. You can also catch him and Joe Marino chopping it up every week at NFL First Read. For Ryan Heath, Jakob Sanderson, and our phenomenal guest, the big Zamboni, Brett Whitefield, I'm your host, Thomas Tipple. Thanks for joining us. Remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and that your best days are always spent tilting. We'll see you guys next time.